Do you bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And good morning, Birds fans. Yes, we may love to argue, but one thing I'm pretty sure we won't be arguing about today is the Eagles are off to a pretty good start. 3-0 after their first 3 games this week. We'll continue to look back at what they've accomplished the first 3 games and start to look ahead to the Jacksonville Jaguars coming to town. On Sunday, you got your Mac and Mac guys, McDonald and McMullen, here to hang with you. All right, J-Mac, 2 things we need to use to kick off today's show. Number 1 is Nick Sirianni in his day after press conference went down a road that you correctly predicted yesterday, and also the competition in the NFC East for those who were tuned last night to the Giants and the Cowboys. Let's keep it home at first. Nick Sirianni and what he had to say after the victory, day after the victory against the Commanders down in D.C. Third-party ties. You got Doug Pederson coming to town this week, which Eagle fans will certainly be interested in, and I think they will do the right thing and pay the homage they need to their only Super Bowl winning coach in the history of the franchise, but then he'll get down to football. Nick Sirianni and Doug Pederson, their tie is, yes, they've both been head coaches for the Philadelphia Eagles, one past, one present, but they also have a good third-party friend in the coach of the Indianapolis Colts, Frank Reich. You predicted yesterday that that's where the head coach of the Eagles would go this week and say nice things about Doug Pederson through Frank Reich, and that's exactly what came down yesterday, Johnny Mac.
Yeah. I was the one who asked Nick the question about who's getting the text message first, you or Doug. And Nick correctly pointed out, hey, they're in the AFC South, man.
Right.
He's got to be rooting for us. So he mentioned he's probably got the mojo when it comes to that. Frank's a competitive guy. But it is an interesting connection, obviously. Nick doesn't know Doug that well.
Right.
Has only met him in passing. Doesn't have a close relationship with him, but obviously they're both very close to Frank Reich. And there's a lot of coaches, not a lot, but there's important coaches on Doug's staff that have a very big relationship with Nick Sirianni, namely Mike McCoy, who hired him with the Chargers and was his boss for a long time, and Jim Bob Cooter, who was here last year. And that was one of the strangest stories of the year. Nick just dropped him at a press conference. There's Jim Bob Cooter, and we all looked around, and when did he show up? And a lot of that, to be honest, had to do with the poor start, and they wanted sort of a sounding board, somebody who's been at a high level coaching in this league, and they called him. He was never an official part of the staff.
Was that his title? Was he in
special projects? With basically there to give the head coach advice. So, and he constantly from that point forward would mention Jim Bob quite a bit. And he's down with Doug Pederson. and Press Taylor as well. They have some kind of relationship, which I'm not sure if they. I'm not sure where that stems from. I got to look deeper into that. But Press is obviously the offensive coordinator. Couldn't coach here. Well, he could coach here. Then he couldn't coach here. Now he can coach again. So you be the judge of Press Taylor. But he took a lot of hits from the organization, which I think were completely unfair. But we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of underlying storylines with Doug Pederson coming back to Lincoln Financial Field, not the least of which the Eagles have a very, very good football team, and Jacksonville's. That was my easiest prediction, Jody. I joked about some of my bad predictions yesterday. One of my easiest predictions was Jacksonville would be thrilled with Doug Pederson coming off Urban Meyer. I mean, that was the easiest. That's the easiest prediction in the world.
I think they might have been thrilled with you or I if we took over instead of Urban
that's why
Meyer.
I said it's the easiest prediction in the world. But they're very happy, and they're 2-1, and they just destroyed the Chargers, who are a good football team on the road. And Herbert wasn't healthy and all that stuff, but still, that's a pretty impressive performance. And Trevor Lawrence, all of a sudden, we talked about way back in the day when Carson Wentz, people they want to do all the revisionist history and act like Carson Wentz wasn't a good quarterback before all the injuries and all the nonsense started. He was a very good quarterback in 2017. A lot of that had to do with the so-called quarterback incubator of Pederson, Frank Reich, John DeFilippo. Well, he did the same thing in Jacksonville. You have Pederson, you have Mike McCoy, you have Jim Bob Cooter, sort of bringing those guys with tons of experience around quarterbacks, around a young quarterback, and you're seeing quick advancement from Trevor Lawrence, who's got a heck of a lot of talent, Jody.
You got a lot of talent. That's why he was the number one pick in the draft, deservedly so. You might not have known it off last year's statistics, but it was a bad football team that he was joining that was just decimated from within by their head coach, which is never a good thing. So, yes, the Jaguars are a much more formidable opponent coming in this week than they would have been in past years. About the matchup between these two teams, coming back to Philadelphia, Doug Pederson. I saw a little of his media availability yesterday, and he said all the right things and had a legit smile on his face when he talked about returning to Philadelphia. Yesterday on the show, we talked plenty about the fact that the Eagles have, although been scheduled for one road game, one home game, and two road games, it seems like they've actually played two home games because they, for the most part, owned the stadium on Sunday with Washington. At home, Doug Pederson coming in. Once the first kickoff goes off, I think that it's basically a game between the Jaguars and the Eagles. What kind of reception does Doug Pederson get? Because I know it is probably more of a talk radio thing than a Birds 365 thing, but it does intrigue me on the behavior of the Eagle fans, and major thumbs up for how they behaved Sunday, going down to Washington and taking over that house, and no major issues or incidents with the Eagle fans. How do you think they handled Dougie P on Sunday?
Yeah, I would be stunned if it's anything less than applause and thank you and cheers and that kind until the kickoff, obviously, and then it's understandable. It's not going to be a Jalen Reagor situation where every time he sets foot on the field, everybody's going to boo. I mean, why would Eagles fans be upset about Doug Pederson? They might not have liked the way it ended, certainly 4-11-1. That was a disaster of a season. A lot of moving parts, the pandemic, big part of it. But, I mean, there's one Super Bowl championship in this organization's history, and that's the guy that got it for him. Andy Reid came back, and they were very appreciative. I don't see any difference here when Doug Pederson comes back. It's not going to be Carson Wentz angst, Jalen Reagor angst. I mean, this guy did a lot for the organization. You and I talked about it. Look, I think Nick Sirianni's doing a great job. But I still don't think this is before Nick Sirianni. So put Nick Sirianni aside. I don't think they should have fired Doug Pederson. I think he should have gotten one more chance. Then if he doesn't turn it around, then you go in a different direction. That's my personal belief. I still believe that. He did so much for this organization, this city, getting him over the hump. And then I think people forget, with all the injuries and all that kind of stuff, still got to the playoffs 2 other times. There's nothing not to be appreciative of. And he was a good guy as well, on top of it. Nothing.
There's only one thing that there's not to be appreciative of, and yours truly has been following the Philadelphia Eagles in town here for 32 years. And I was really pretty surprised. I knew back in the early 90s when Reggie White left the Philadelphia Eagles and went to the Green Bay Packers. And we all know full well the story, or I think most do, that Norman Braman, the owner of the Eagles, never even made him an offer. They just knew what Reggie's asking price was going to be. And Braman said at the time, I'm not paying a football player that. So it wasn't like Reggie chose to leave the Philadelphia Eagles. He never had an offer to stay. And he's one of the greatest defenders of all time. I was there the day when the Green Bay Packers came into town, and there were more boos than cheers when Reggie came out onto the field, which I was just floored and flabbergasted by, because it just didn't make any sense. You've got one of the greatest players of all time, wore your uniform. Your owner basically showed him the door to leave town, and they booed him for one reason and one reason only. He wasn't wearing Eagle green. He was wearing Packer green. And
I agree. When kickoff starts,
can be harsh about that. No, I'm talking about introductions. I'm talking about before the game even started, there were more boos than cheers for Reggie White.
Number one, I think players are a little bit different than coaches, because obviously they're going to be on the field. Number two, I think, I think things are more obvious today than they were back then. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think, maybe a lot of fans didn't have that information, didn't understand that Reggie White,
then they weren't listening to WIP, because we were talking about it.
I just don't think now everything is put through the ringer. That's why, right? That's why this show exists. It is 24/7, 365. I don't think it was like that back then. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think it was under the microscope as much as it is now, especially the contract stuff, especially the there was no Spotrac or over the cap back then. There was no constant talking. Like we're back in the off season, you and I were pointing out, hey, this is it for Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's eligible for an extension after this season. That's how far ahead of that story we were. I don't think it was like that as much back then. I know when I first started covering the league, it wasn't as big a part of it, the business aspect of it. So I think there's more attention paid to it. I think there's more education on it. I think fans are better understanding of what's going on. Not all, but a lot, certainly the passionate ones. But that's just my take. And but at the end of the day, no, you shouldn't have booed Reggie White. So if there's some older fans back there, no, you shouldn't have booed
the first player that I ever saw. And there's been a lot of players that have left and come back here to Philadelphia during my 30 plus years. First one I ever saw get more cheers than boos was B-Doc. And that was a little bit after Reggie, and certainly more into the era of understanding the details between what came down between the team and the player. The Eagles, again, decided to move away from the player. They could have kept Brian Dawkins, but the Broncos were willing to offer a more significant contract that the Eagles just didn't think he was worth. Oh, they got that one wrong. But
what about AI? Let me tell you, I don't remember. What about?
Well, I was in the house that night.
He was.
I was in the. Was that Wells Fargo already? Yeah, they were over to Wells Fargo already.
But he was so popular. I don't remember.
He got major cheers. Yeah. The Sixer
so
fans.
Popular.
I think Sixer fans are a little different than Eagle fans. Oh yeah, Allen Iverson got 90-10 cheers over boos when he returned. So a little bit different. But you made a good point about Andy. Andy certainly got more cheers than he did boos. which you're right. Coaches and players might be a little bit different. I expect it to be a very welcoming response when Doug Pederson jogs out onto the field. Which yesterday, did you see the video on Doug? He's wearing a hat. What happened to the visor?
He'll have the visor game day, I would think. I've been paid attention. I assume he has a visor game day in Jackson.
He's got a little bit more trim to the hair these days, not going much mullet back there the way he usually does. He had a regular baseball
in
cap
season, you see Nick Sirianni, the wild gesticulation with the beard, not the beard. You don't have time to shave in season.
We'll see what Dougie looks like when he comes out. All right, Giants and Cowboys last night. Johnny Mac, here was my impression. I kind of like both teams' defenses. I was impressed by the defense.
Yeah, Wink Martindale should be the Eagles' defensive coordinator, man. That's who the Eagles want. Eagles fans want Wink Martindale. There's got to be a Jonathan Gannon for Wink Martindale trade because that guy's aggressive.
Don't know if I'd go there, but that's okay. The Giants did play pretty well defensively last night. The Cowboys played really well defensively for me. The Giants came out, at least the way that it looked on TV. They were not going to let Micah Parsons beat them. They had an extra guy with an eye on him. We're not going to let this guy beat us. Oh, so everybody else did on defense from the Cowboys. Yeah. They played a really good defensive team. Daniel Jones looked a lot like Carson Wentz to me, running for his life on almost.
Well, he faced more pressure, 24 pressures. On Daniel Jones. Carson only had 17, and Carson was under siege. So, yeah, the Cowboys were getting after. Hey, the Cowboys, they have some – I said their roster's top-heavy, but the top of their roster is good. And C.D. Lamb didn't play well last night, dropping passes
drop
all
a wide
over the
open
place.
pass.
Yeah. And that typically isn't going to happen. But when you talk about Micah Parsons, and everybody's scared to death of that guy. And then, DeMarcus Lawrence, I think he got banged up. I think he got hurt. So maybe that helps the Eagles moving forward. Trayvon Diggs is just a playmaker. And people, you have that debate. Well, he gives up, but, that guy makes plays and he turns games. So their roster is very top heavy, but the top of their roster is, and who else played well? Jason Peters at left guard. Played pretty well. Played pretty darn well.
That looked wrong when he came out onto the field playing guard, no less. Remember all the falderall and fiddly-dee about him playing guard?
Yeah, he was playing guard.
That's where he played last night. They plugged him in at guard. They didn't move Smith back into the guard and put JP at tackle.
Well,
no, they told Jason, get in there. You're playing guard. And it just kind of bothered me because, remember, he was brought back to be a guard, and then they had an injury, and they moved him back out to left tackle. Oh, well, now you got to pay me as a left tackle. What do you mean? You already signed your contract.
Yeah, I've been speaking to Doug.
We need to renegotiate on the fly here since you're going to be using me at tackle again. And tackles get paid more money. Oh, no.
Yeah, that was the Andre Dillard burst. Andre was going to be the starting left tackle. I remember Doug Pederson trying to explain that. That was a difficult one for him because, Doug obviously has no control over the contract stuff. And now we know the roster stuff. And, Jason signed to play. I think he signed to play right guard. The injury happened, and all of a sudden they had to move him out, but he wouldn't agree to go out there until they redid it. Mm-hmm. And for a couple weeks in practice, he's still playing right. And we kept asking Doug Pederson, why isn't Jason playing left tackle? And he had to, end around that. Yeah. That was a difficult one.
But even though I was impressed by both teams' defense, I wasn't really impressed by either team's offense. Pollard had one really good run, got into the second.
Well, it's Cooper Rush and Daniel Jones. There's no surprise there.
Yeah.
It's not Tom Brady and Peyton Manning in their primes.
And nobody is putting Jalen Hurts in that category anymore with those two guys.
All Cooper Rush does is win games, though. He's got the highest winning percentage of a starting quarterback in NFL history. I'm just saying, Jim.
That's true. You like to use that phrase, small sample. That would be Cooper Rush. He does win games. Believe me when I tell you. Well, no, Dak might actually be back by not this upcoming week, but the week after.
They think he might be back for the Commanders week 4. Jerry Jones does at least.
I know Jerry said that. Yeah. No chance, not happening. Do you know off the top of your head who the Cowboys play next week?
Washington.
Yeah, I should know. Oh, okay. All right. So, Cooper Rush could actually be showing his seat back on the bench as an undefeated starting NFL quarterback. All right. McMullen and McDonald hanging with you. We'll stick around here for another hour and 40 minutes. We got plenty of time to chat you up. We're chatting next with our bud, Mr. Special Ed himself, Ed Kracz from Sports Illustrated. JB's running, Johnny Mac's running mate over there at SI. He joins us next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pondley Hockey. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pondley Hockey a call.
Tuesday get together here on Birds 365. Mackinac, McMullen, and McDonald. Joined by John's pal from Sports Illustrated. We like to call him Game Day Kracz, but we can't get him on game days anymore because Friday is too cramped the schedule for him. That's Sirianni. Why we didn't get him on this week.
Nick. Go later, Nick Sirianni. Closed circuit.
Both you guys need to twist the coach's arm a little bit.
I know.
So we missed out on Ed prior to the Commanders game. You did like the Eagles against the Commanders, didn't you, Ed?
Yeah, I picked them to win 24-8. I don't know if you heard.
Really? That was a pretty good prediction on your part.
Well, it is Tuesday, right? So it's kind of a hindsight prediction.
Yeah.
But, no, I did have them winning, and I had them covering, so all good there.
I had them winning. I didn't have them covering. It was 7, right? 7. What was it?
6.5.
6.5.
I had them winning by 6. So, I was off on that one.
Yeah, I was 28-20. I thought, Carson Wentz would find a way to score. What was I wrong about that?
Pretty impressed. We'll start with the defense because, Carson was under siege. It was evident, they knew, look, they know better than anybody. You hit Carson early and he starts to get a little bit flustered. Now, that's any quarterback, but it's ramped up to times 10 with Carson. And he tries to, push things. He holds on to the football. They got the 2 forced fumbles. I thought the turning point of the game was Brandon Graham going Super Bowl 52 on Carson. That was they had just kicked the field goal. Washington, so it's a 3-0 game. They have an opportunity to answer, and all of a sudden, I think it was the second play, strip sack, Brandon Graham, short field, Dallas Goedert, touchdown, game over. I think 17 pressures, Ed Kracz. How good was that defensive line? Or was it the Washington O-line?
Well, I think a lot of it was probably everything, but, a big part of it was Carson Wentz just, that he holds the ball too long.
Oh, yeah.
That was the thing I was saying going into the game to some other people was, if the Eagles have to say after this game, he got the ball out quick, I don't want to hear it. I mean, that's always the go-to when they don't get the sacks or the pressures. Well, the quarterback got the ball out quick. Carson Wentz is not known for getting the ball out quick. So that they knew he was going to hold the ball, and they know his fumble history. So they were just not going to attack him. They were going to attack the ball because he's laid it down, I think, 67 times in his career going into this game. He fumbled it twice. Hassan Reddick also had a really nice game with that strip sack. But, yeah, you could say Graham's play was probably, the turning point. It set up that 23-yard screen pass touchdown to Dallas Goedert. But, man, I'll tell you, Fletcher Cox really set the tone for me. I mean, in that first quarter, he's the one that was in there first. Him and Josh Sweat met at the quarterback, and then Cox got another sack all by himself, and that just kind of opened the floodgates. 4 sacks in the first quarter. So, Wentz was hit early. He was hit often, and that was just an amazing game by the defensive line. I mean, 9 sacks don't come along very often in an NFL football game. I remember years ago when Troy Aikman, I think, was a rookie, the Eagles sacked him like maybe 12 times. 11 times.
Yeah.
So, you have to enjoy this one because I don't think they'll sack the quarterback 9 times again this year. They may not do it for another couple of years.
Yeah, probably not.
I mean, it was just a great job. And what I liked was that Gannon didn't really have to pressure a whole lot, right? He didn't have to send that extra blitzer to get the pressure. That pressure was generated all from the front 4. And, yeah, the Washington offensive line isn't the best. The center was a replacement. But, a lot of the pressure came from the edge, too. I know they were bull rushing up the middle, but Eagles.
Well, they have bad tackles as well. Sam Cosmi had a
bad game. I know they're really high on him, but that whole offensive line did not play at all well enough. But then Carson gets his share of the blame for not getting it out quick enough, but he never gets the ball out quick enough.
Yeah. All right, Ed, since we went there, let me follow up there. We all love to make our predictions. 2023, the Washington Redskins starting quarterback will be Carson Wentz or someone other than Carson Wentz?
Well, Jody, I know how much you loved Sam Howell coming into the draft. We've talked about him before. But to me, he was my favorite quarterback coming into this draft. And what a terrible group of quarterbacks. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, it was just not.
I bet you Kenny Pickett's better than Mitchell Trubisky. I haven't seen him play, but I bet you he's better.
We might see him play when the Steelers come to Philadelphia in a few weeks. He might be lining up behind center. But, I just like Sam Howell. I mean, I've always liked Sam Howell. So
that's true. I forgot you were a big Howell guy.
I am. So if you're looking at a quarterback in 2023 that's not going to be Carson Wentz down there in Washington, I'm going to say Sam Howell. I think it's going to be Sam Howell.
Sam Howell, yeah.
I hate so here's my follow-up question. Where will Carson be backing up next year?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I'll be a grad assistant coach at North Dakota State.
You went grad assistant on him, huh, McMullen?
Wow. I don't know what his contract is. I'm sure he's got.
Yeah, no, he's fine. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that he could be a backup in Washington. I mean, they may open the door to an open quarterback competition and see where it goes. I mean, you just can't. I mean, this is his second team in 2 years, right? So
third team in 3 years. Yeah,
if you
3
count
and 3.
Philly, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't see who would want to take him in that contract to be a backup. So I think Washington's kind of stuck with him, unless they want to cut him and eat whatever the money hit is. I don't know. I'm not. When Carson left, I kind of checked out on all things Carson, contract and otherwise. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but.
But
Again,
there's never 32 starting quarterbacks in this league, and I don't mean that literally because there is 32. I mean that figuratively, guys who deserve to be starting quarterbacks. So you think about what the Eagles were able to get from Indianapolis, then you think about what Indianapolis was able to get from Washington, or that type of quarterback. There's a lot of desperation. So you never say never, and it's Jalen Hurts. I don't want to go all Jalen Hurts on you, but never get too high, never get too low. He had a bad game. We'll see if he can rebound. I do want to go back to what we talked about with the defensive line, though, from this perspective, Ed. We'll get the happy Tuesday to you. We'll get to talk to JG later this morning. But, he doesn't want to blitz. He didn't have to blitz. But as you pointed out, this is kind of an anomaly. A quarterback who's going to hold on to the football. Does that kind of success maybe down the road hurt a little bit from that perspective, thinking, oh, I can get home with 4? And that's not always necessarily going to be the case.
Well, he said last week, Jonathan Gannon, that it's all situation, what happens during a game. So, I mean, if he's not getting home with 4, in future games, I would hope that he would see that and say, hey, we got to start bringing pressure. I mean, it's not like he didn't blitz. I think he blitzed on the first play of the game.
Yeah, he blitzed.
Yeah. So I would hope not. I would hope, JG's a smart guy. I think he would recognize the fact that, hey, my guys aren't getting home. I need to bring somebody. I mean, I think he, maybe he's getting a little more comfortable with the personnel groupings and, with, the scheme and what he can play week to week. That, I don't think he would get blinded by the fact that, hey, I got to get home with my 4. I got to get home with my 4 and try to get that square peg into a round hole. I would like to think he would be able to adjust and send pressure if need be.
By the way, I looked it up while you guys were talking. Carson Wentz dead cap hit. If he lasts this season going into 2023, 0. They can get out and not own a thing.
Yeah, so grad assistant. Yeah.
Johnny Mac might have hit that nail on the head. Yeah. All right. Opinion question. You first, Ed, but Johnny Mac, I'd like you to chime in as well. Which of the Eagles 2 coordinators? Well, make it 3. Put Michael Clay in there if you want. Which of the 3 Eagles coordinators is most likely to have a Ken Dorsey moment and just lose his mind, be it Shane Steichen, Jonathan Gannon, or Michael Clay? Or is it as obvious as, none of those guys are really built that way that they would go psycho up in the booth if something went against them? I hope everybody knows the reference I'm making to the Bills' new offensive coordinator who just lost his you-know-what after the Bills couldn't get that last score against Miami on Sunday. Which could, because they all seem pretty damn mild-mannered to me, which one is most likely to just go off the deep end?
Yeah, I don't think any of them are wired that way. John and I have both talked to these guys off the podium, on the sidelines of practice, and I just don't see them wired that way to lose their cool like that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go nobody, but there's certainly times in a game where they probably feel like doing that, but I don't think they would. I think they want to keep their cool, and when you lose your cool, like that's the bad look.
Yeah. I agree with that. They're not built like that. But if they forced me to pick one, I would pick Gannon because he's got so much energy, which people don't realize. Like he's bouncing off the walls.
But he never shows that on the sidelines either.
No.
Anytime they ever go to shot him, he's standing there stoically staring out at the field. If he's got
because
all
it's
energy,
not,
he does a good job storing it.
Yeah, it's not in his nature. Ed's right. It's not going to happen to any of them. But Shane Steichen, I mean, no, never. I'm just saying there's like a 0% chance for Shane Steichen, a 2% chance for Michael Clay, and I'd bump it up to 5% to John. That's what I'm saying.
Hey, what about Nick Sirianni? I mean,
Sirianni,
Nick will do that.
You can see him on the sidelines, throwing the play chart or pulling the headsets off and slamming them down. I mean,
I'll punch you in the face
80% on that.
If you ace him in tennis, especially if you're wearing the Giants hat.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's got that temper, man. I'll tell you, he's a fiery guy.
Temper. Yeah, he's got a big temper. So yeah, Nick is the one. Joe.
Yeah, Nick's the one.
Eddie, I got to give Devontae Smith his credit because he had a breakout game this past week.
Man,
best of his early NFL career. And for those who worried when he took a goose egg week 1 and didn't have any receptions for any yards, yeah, we told you not to worry. You shouldn't have worried. And he proved that this past week. That's one of the things that has impressed me so far more than anything else, Ed, is the balance to the Eagles, balance between offense and defense, balance of the run to the pass, balance of who's making the plays and who's getting the football. And that's credit to all the coaches, starting from Nick and heading straight down to all the coordinators and the positional coaches. Not only are the Eagles 3-0, but they're a balanced 3-0. Are they not, Ed?
Yeah, well, they rushed it 30 times, or they had 30 listed attempts. They didn't do much with them. They only gained 72 yards on the ground. I mean, that was a big surprise. The Commanders came in not being able to stop the run, and the Eagles just couldn't run 30 carries. But to your point, yeah, the balance was there. Hurts only threw it 32 times, I believe, 30 runs. So yeah, that's you couldn't script a better game plan than that. And as far as Devontae Smith goes, my jaw was on on that little cramped press box table in FedEx Field, watching him, because a lot of those plays he made were down toward the end zone where John and I were sitting, right? I mean, right in front of us. And listen, I think the best game I ever saw from an Eagles receiver was probably in the Super Bowl down in Jacksonville when Terrell Owens had that game coming out of the hyperbaric chamber with his broken leg and catching 9 passes for 123 yards. But, I put Devontae Smith's game, a close second at this point, having seen these Eagles receivers for a number of years live. I mean, just the way he flies through the air and catches the ball and holds on to it. I mean, when he hurt his back, it was reminiscent of Tyree Jackson when he in summer camp last year went up high and landed on his back and broke his back. When I saw Devontae do that at the goal line, I thought, my goodness, because he came up holding his back, I thought, I hope he didn't break his back like Tyree did. I mean, that was the kind of play that Jackson broke his back on. But Smith said afterward he just lost his wind, needed to catch his breath, right back out there, and then makes that another great catch on 4th and goal in the end zone over Kendall Fuller. But just his ability to control his body, get high like that, toe tap on the sidelines, you just can't say enough about that game that he played. To me, after the defense, he was my second biggest takeaway from that game. And that just shows you how far Jalen Hurts has come, that he's not usually Jalen Hurts is your first or second takeaway coming out of a game. But in this game, to me, it was the defense and Devontae and then probably Jalen. So, you can't say enough about the balance that Eagles offense had in Washington and throughout the season, really, like you said, Jody, and then Devontae Smith, just an amazing performance from him.
Yeah. Now, I got the luxury of seeing Randy Moss early in his career, so it's not the best game I've ever seen from a receiver. But from when I've been covering the Eagles, and I wasn't here for TO, you were, I believe, Ed. Now
I was like the third guy on that. Reuben Frank was, I was at the Courier Times prior to what I'm doing now, but I was down in Jacksonville and I saw that game, but I wasn't like full time on the beat. So I didn't go to all the games and this and that. Just kind of in the postseason is when they dusted me off and sent me to the games. But that game T.O. had in the Super Bowl was just
And from when I've been here, the best wide receiver performance I've ever seen from an Eagles player, week 1, A.J. Brown in Detroit. Number 2, week 3, Devontae Smith in Washington.
This group
is you would rank AJ's performance the first week over.
I am so in love with AJ Brown as a player. I can't believe how good he is.
Yeah.
And I think don't get me wrong. Everybody deserves credit. That catch, and Ed mentioned the 44-yard catch where Devontae got the wind knocked at him. That was unbelievable. To me, the touchdown was even better. I mean, he Randy Mossed that football. He high pointed it over Kendall Fuller. Just a tremendous play. But man, AJ Brown, he's the domino, man. Like Devontae's a great receiver, but if you're measuring up against other number ones, you're like, he's pretty good, still pretty good, but probably 10, 15, somewhere in that range. As a number two, he might be the best number two receiver in football. The domino effect of AJ Brown to this offense and what it does. You saw it last year. It was, Devontae and Dallas Goedert. And then at the end of the season, it was Dallas Goedert and Devontae. Pretty good players, right? But defenses could get a beat on them. Now you have AJ, who's, one of the best number one wide receivers on any team. And all of a sudden, Devontae's your second or third. Dallas is your second or third. What do you do? What do you do if you're an opposing defensive coordinator?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, listen, Brown and Smith are just two different players. I mean, Brown's the big physical 6'1", 225. I'm getting this football, just throw it to me. I mean, that catch he had on that 3rd and goal throw from the 9, he just out physicaled. I think it was Benjamin St. Just on that play.
Who's like the biggest corner there is, by the way.
Yeah, and Brown caught it at like the 1.5 or 2 yard line, and then just kind of bulled his way in from there. So he's the big physical receiver. Smith is the probably more polished route runner. The actual, he's a receiver playing receiver. You could say Brown's like a linebacker playing receiver the way he's built.
Yeah, but he moves like a receiver.
Yeah.
But by the way, Jalen's worst throw of the game, Ed, should have been a touchdown to AJ Brown. He was open on that deep shot, and he got the ball out late, and it didn't work. So that should have been like a 50-something yard touchdown.
And that was in the second half. We could get off the narrative of, hey, why can't this team score in the second half? But be that as it may, Brown is, I think he was tied for 8th in the league coming into the game in third down catches and yards. I think he had 4 for 70 something. He came out of that with 2 more catches on third down, including that touchdown. Now he's up to like 6 for 94 on third down. So he's the guy that obviously Hurts is looking for on third down, because, that guy's going to get open, like his little sign in his locker says. Inside the locker room, he's got the little sign, always open. So that on third down, on that money down, Brown's going to get open, and Hurts is going to look for him, and he's going to go to him. So I expect Brown to probably climb in that category in the NFL of third down receiving leaders. Like I said, tied for 8th coming in, might rise a spot or 2 after this week's performance. I don't know how the other receivers did, but we'll know probably tomorrow when the NFL releases its ranks.
All right, Eddie, I got one more wide receiver question for you. What week will we see the Zach Pascal power jet sweep play? Will that be coming back anytime soon?
I would say Nakobe Dean probably has a better chance at getting reps than seeing Zach Pascal sweep the edge again. Nick said yesterday that, he probably should have called a timeout there. He still had 2, I think, in the half, and it was, the half was winding down. And it was a great drive. I mean, they converted 4 straight first downs going from, I think, their own 12. It started with a Miles Sanders 13-yard run. There was 2 receptions, I think, to Pascal and Smith for 13, and then the big hitter to Brown for 38. So that was a great looking drive. And, to not get any points out of it, that could have hurt in a tighter game, no doubt. So I wouldn't expect to see that one anytime soon. The Eagles just don't do a good job with those jet sweeps for some reason. You see other teams do it. The Commanders did it on the first play of the game.
Well, you got to have a player like Curtis Samuel. You can't do it with Zach Pascal. I mean,
what about Jalen Reagor? They tried it with Reagor. He couldn't do it either. I mean, they got to find somebody that can do it, or they got to block it better.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Jalen Reagor has the physical gifts, but obviously doesn't have the. By the way,
how about John's man crush? Let's power sweep AJ Brown.
Nah,
since
it's not
a
that type of
linebacker playing wide receiver. Give him the ball, let him run.
He could probably do it. He's so good, he could probably do it. By the way,
he's hard to bring down. Like that's
Yeah.
another thing about it. Being that size, it might work. You might want to try AJ Brown. He's a big dude, man. He becomes a running back after he catches the ball. So what the heck? Give it a shot.
Think about all the problems this team's had at receiver in the Doug Pederson era. Doug's coming back. Right now, Pro Football Focus, number 3, A.J. Brown, number 8, Devontae Smith. 2 top 10 receivers in the entire NFL for a team that never has receivers. You brought up a name. Now, I don't know if you get this, Ed, but I get this every week. Where's Nakobe Dean? Where's Nakobe Dean? Why isn't Nakobe Dean playing? Is anybody watching TJ Edwards? Because TJ ain't coming off the field. I'll bring linebackers in this league, Pro Football Focus. Number 3, TJ Edwards.
I thought it was 2, but maybe after last night, because I saw the rankings yesterday, so maybe he dropped.
It might be 2. Might be 2.
Yeah.
2 or 3. All right.
He's just controlling the middle of that field, TJ Edwards. I mean, he should be the first guy in line for an extension, in my opinion. The Eagles have 18 guys on 1-year deals.
Yeah.
So who are you going to do? Who are you going to bring back? What's Edwards, 27? He's been in this system for 5 years or so, 3 years, 4 years. I don't remember, but he's just dominating the middle. I mean, he had 10 tackles against the Commanders, 10 against the Vikings. He's going to lead this team in tackles. He was second on the team in tackles last year behind Alex Singleton, but he had 125 of those. I mean, this guy just tackles. He's a little better in the coverage game. He understands the defense. You know, when you look at that play when Carson Wentz tried to do that throwback screen or whatever it was to Samuel, when he faked to the right, turned around and threw it to Samuel, TJ Edwards and Avonte Maddox, who, by the way, is playing excellent football too. Both those guys, they didn't bite on that fake to the right. They were right there, and they just closed before Wentz even threw that football on Samuel and held it to no gain or 1 yard gain. But Edwards, to me, and John, you've been consistent with him, for the last year that he's their best linebacker. And, he is their best linebacker. And again, the Eagles never thought Nakobe Dean would be there in the 3rd round. So they drafted him because, okay, he's great value in the 3rd round, but there was no plan for them to take a linebacker maybe until Kyron Johnson in the 6th round. So he's now a luxury that you have, a depth piece that you can use. And, like I said, Edwards on a 1-year deal. At the end of this year, it's over. The Eagles should re-sign him. But Kaiser White also on a 1-year deal, who I think is just as good, if not better, than TJ Edwards. But he's a guy that they might not re-sign because they know they have Nakobe. So your linebackers next year could be Edwards and Dean. Because Kaiser White will probably leave. But Kaiser White is very, very good. I mean, he can tackle, he can cover, he's aggressive, and it's a tough call between the two of those guys who you're bringing back. But I would bring back Edwards.
Eddie, you make a good point. In a week where the Eagles got 9 sacks, 1 from Mr. Edwards and the 8 others from the defensive line. Well, Kaiser White played great on Sunday. And James Bradbury, there's a reason that you get 9 sacks, because the initial coverage is there. Nobody's breaking open off the line of scrimmage. Bradbury and Slay both played great, which gave the guys a chance to get home. And those were 2 very key Howie Roseman acquisitions this offseason.
Yeah.
White and Bradbury, that you got to give the general manager credit for.
Yeah, Bradbury for the 2nd week in a row has played 100% of the snaps.
Don't tell Groats that, Ed.
Yeah, Bob Groats is a little anti-Bradbury. We're working on him, though. I think.
Are we beating up on Groats here? He said that after the first week.
When
Bradbury missed that tackle badly against the Lions.
Listen,
it's the only bad play that Bradbury's made in 3 weeks. But that's when we had Groats on and he called them out.
As we say in the business, Jody, we have some off the record stuff that you don't know about.
Oh, really? Okay, all right. Maybe I don't know from whence I speak.
We carpooled down to DC together, John, me, and Bob Groats and Martin Frank. And,
you did?
Yeah.
You 4 ugly guys in a car? My God, how did you not get pulled over for ugliness?
Well, there was nobody. Everybody got out of our way when we were doing 90 down 95. I shouldn't say no. We weren't doing 90.
Who was driving?
Ed was driving.
But
you got a little bit of a leg foot on you, Kracz. I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that speed limits are optional in some areas, 95 being one of them.
Yeah.
All right, Eddie, this is probably overstated. This is probably a sports talk radio thing more than a hardcore Eagles thing. The fact that Doug Pederson is coming back and he's the former coach of the Eagles. There are some players still on this team that certainly Doug coached and were part of the championship team. Is there an advantage to be had between one of these two parties? Does Doug have more of an advantage knowing the tendencies of his former Eagle players, or do those former Eagle players have an advantage because they know the tendencies of Doug Pederson? Is there an advantage to be had, or is this something that's blatantly overrated on both sides?
That's a good question for the week, Jody. I'm going to explore that in depth with, in some of these locker room trips this week and with some of these coaches. But, I would think that, listen, he knows the players. He knows what they do well. But this is a different scheme that Nick Sirianni's running, okay? It's not like what Doug Pederson tried to run. So I'm not sure it's an advantage in that regard. Yeah, he knows the players. And, it might be an advantage for the Eagles because they know what Doug Pederson runs. They know his scheme, but it's different personnel. And I think the Jags personnel is pretty darn good. I mean, they've had the first overall pick for the last 10 years, right? Or it feels like it, but they've had high draft picks for years and years and years. So, they have good personnel. So maybe they're a little more familiar with how Doug is deploying that personnel. But again, it's the personnel they've never seen before or played against before. So, yeah, it might be an advantage. They know kind of what that's doing, but now you have to go out and execute and block these guys and tackle them and rush Trevor Lawrence. But, yeah, I would say it's probably more of an advantage for the Eagles players, knowing Doug what he runs, than it is for Doug knowing what they do, because it's a different scheme that Nick Sirianni's running.
All right, SI.com/NFL/Eagles. Last one from me, Ed, on a happy Tuesday. We'll talk about that. Frank Reich obviously has a relationship with both Nick and Doug, but Nick brought up the great point. He's got to get the answer first, right? He's got to get the text message answered first because they're rivals, Jacksonville and Indianapolis. So Frank's got to go hardcore, right? He's going to be helping out the Eagles. He's got to.
Well, how much help is it when, the Colts can't win in Jacksonville? I mean, that's a house of horrors.
Yeah.
I think they're 0-7 down there in the last 7 years.
24-0. They beat Indianapolis.
What help is Frank going to be? I mean, come on, he can't even win down there in Jacksonville. I mean, cross him off the list. Go with your gut.
Yeah. But you mentioned the talent of this team. They're a little bit like Detroit week one in that you pick in the top 10. For them, it's been number one back-to-back years. All of a sudden, you wake up one day, Tony Khan wakes up in between booking wrestling cards and says, oh, I got some pretty good players. That kind of happened to Jacksonville. And all of a sudden, you don't have an embarrassment of the coach getting grinded on because he can't come back with the team after a loss. This is a talented team. Is this the first test for the Philadelphia Eagles this year? Well, they had a test in Detroit, so second test.
Yeah. Listen, they have an emotionally mature guy now, right? Isn't that what Jeffrey Lurie said he wanted when he fired Chip Kelly? Was an emotionally stable,
emotionally intelligent.
Emotionally, that's the phrase. Yes. Yeah, so that's what Jacksonville has now. And how can you not love Doug? I mean, the players love playing for Doug. I mean, just a player's coach through and through. And so is Sirianni. But I think that they've got pieces, but it's a big spot for Trevor Lawrence. I know he threw 3 touchdowns in Los Angeles against the Chargers, but that LA environment, fan wise, isn't Philadelphia. I mean,
no, it is not.
They just came off the beach. They put their surfboards in their trunk and went to the game and are hanging out, whatever the stereotype is for those LA fans. But it's going to be a tough test, I think, for the Jags coming in. They got Devin Lloyd, a linebacker we all wanted here in Philadelphia. At least I thought the Eagles probably should have drafted him. But they've got young pieces, good players, but they're young. They have never been to Philadelphia, and it's just a whole different ballgame here. We saw that crowd Monday night, how I think it impacted Kirk Cousins. It certainly help that Eagles defense get after him. They didn't pile up the sacks like they did in Washington, but they got a lot of pressure on him. So I just think that it's going to be a tough test for Jacksonville. And if Doug can kind of, keep them focused and let them know what it's like to play in Philadelphia, then yeah, they could help. But I think it'll be a test. I think this will be a good test for the Eagles before they go to Arizona the following week. But yeah, you mentioned the Lions. That was a really good test because it was on the road in a loud environment with a lot of expectations, the Hard Knocks thing, everything going for the Lions, and the Eagles showed a lot of resolve in that game. So Eagles are going to be tough to beat if you're the Jaguars. You're going to have to really play them tough. I expect the Eagles to win this game, but it'll be a good test.
And, oh, by the way, one of the guys that the Eagles have to be wary of on Sunday is a guy Howie Roseman wanted a lot during this offseason. Christian Kirk has played well for Jacksonville.
Yes.
Yeah, now, we all saw the fact that said, whoa, it's Christian. Are they getting Devontae Adams? Are they paying Devontae Adams? How much money are they paying Christian Kirk? Yeah, Jacksonville overpaid because they wanted him badly. Oh, he's almost living up to that contract. He's already got 3 touchdowns this year in 3 games.
And again, give Doug and Press Taylor, right? It's the OC down there. I mean, give those guys credit for getting Kirk involved. It's not like they got him and said, okay, we're just going to, maybe throw to him 2 or 3 times a game.
Mike McCoy's down there, Ed. Brian Paganetti.
Jim Bob Cooter is down there.
Jim Bob's down there. Still one of my favorite moments from last year. Hey, there's Jim Bob. Just run in the middle at a press conference. Pointing out Jim Bob Cooter.
The whole band's down there, John, and they're coming to Philadelphia with, hoping to play some sweet music. How's that?
All right. Is there thing, Ed? Nice. Is there any truth to the rumor that Sunday you're going to first pick up McMullen, then go down to Delaware and swing back? That the 4 Mouseketeers will be commuting to the cave together.
I keep telling Jody Groats and Martin. Neither of them live in Delaware. The Groats lives in Delaware.
Elko County.
Martin lives and moved from Delaware, so he no longer lives in Delaware. But
we should get like a JAKIB Media cape that we should wear.
Yeah,
to go on these road trips. I don't know who the swole Batman would be or any of that stuff.
No, you're the swole Batman.
You're the biggest of the bunch for sure.
Well, I'm big, but Ed's put together more than me.
Martin's got to be the fast one because he's the only one out of the 3.
Well, when he's not breaking his leg, he's the
only one that's less than 200 pounds.
He's the speedy Batman.
Yeah, I'm not going to Delaware, Jody. No, to answer your question, no, I'm not picking up John. I'm not going to Delaware.
All right. Well, then don't get a speeding ticket on the Walt Whitman Bridge.
No, I'll get a speeding ticket coming down to the NovaCare complex to get to see Happy Tuesday from Jonathan Gannon. So be careful.
All right, it was a happy Tuesday for us because we had Ed Kracz with us here on Birds 365. Eddie K, we'll talk to you again next week. Thanks, bud.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
see
Ed.
Ed Kracz, Sports Illustrated, here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac, coming back a little bit later, about 20 some odd minutes from now. We'll get a national perspective. It's nice when we have all Eagle guys on. Everybody thinks that the Eagles are maybe the best team in the NFL, the NFC, certainly the NFC East. Sorry, Cowboy fans, Giant fans. Neither one of you wowed me last night. Every once in a while, you want to take a step back and get a perspective from someone who's not inundated by Philadelphia and its coverage. Matt Verderam of Fansided going to give us that perspective. He'll join us a little bit later next hour. Keep it right here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pondley Hockey. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pondley Hockey a call.
Mac guys here on Birds 365. Jody McDonald and John McMullen with an hour left to go on this Tuesday edition. We are up to show number 370. Nice round number, John. Before you know it, we'll be at 400. And by that point, let's see, that's 30 shows. That's 6 weeks. Could the Eagles be 9-0 at that point? We'll have to see. Optimism abounds here in Philadelphia as well. It should, with their 3-0 start, with the Jags coming to town, and we'll do that much more on the Jaguars when we get Matt Verderam up. We'll get his opinion on how quickly the Jags have become a competitive team in the National Football League. JM, needed your take from yesterday's Nick Sirianni press gathering. Mr. Competitive Advantage, not all that forthcoming on Eagle injury issues.
No, we'll see Wednesday. Yeah, he's gone down that route. He was a little bit better last year. Now he's going, I remember, I forget who the injury was. And he said, we were doing a press conference. I wish I could remember what the injury was, but somebody asked him about a specific player. And he said, well, you'll get a report later. And 10 minutes later, we were on the practice field and he was out there. It's like, we're going to see it in 10 minutes. You can say it. It's fine. But yeah, who knows?
I remember that.
Yeah. I forget. You remember who the player was? I forget who the player was. I'll try to think of it in the break. But
no, it wasn't one of the tight ends.
Might have been Miles. Might have been Miles coming back.
That's exactly who it was. Yeah. It was Miles.
Yeah, coming back from the hamstring. And he was very and literally, this is not embellishment. 10 minutes later, we were on the practice field because he was doing this hit before practice, and he was out there. So, I mean, you're not getting a competitive advantage in 10 minutes, but
he was way ahead of you guys for 10 minutes there, John Mac.
Those old tropes die hard. The one I'm most interested in is Landon Dickerson because he was obviously fighting through that foot injury. They took him out towards the end of the game. Pursuo Peta only, I think it was 11 reps. They weren't good 11 good reps.
Yeah, I saw Peta in the game, and I'm going, all right, well, they're giving a couple of their offensive linemen a break here because they've got the game well in hand. The broadcast TV guys didn't know that there was any injury involved. That's something. Or is a guarantee that that the next practice will be a rest day for Landon Dickerson because he's
one
already
of
got
those
notes
guys.
this year.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who gets the rest anyway. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he won't be practicing on Wednesday, and but they'll list him as the foot injury rather than the rest because they added him last week on Friday to the injury report. And then they quickly said he's going to play, but at least behind the scenes. And he did play, and but clearly he's dealing with something that he's not completely right, and we'll see if he's back by Thursday or Friday. He'll probably try to gut through it, but he's not. And this is sort of I think a lot of fans don't understand. I mean, guys play hurt all the time, and it affects their performance. And they play hurt because they're better than the alternative. But, we saw it with Jalen Hurts, the most obvious example when he was fighting through the injury he suffered last year. Ultimately, after the season, he underwent surgery. He was fighting through it. He was playing through the injury. He wasn't the same player from a mobility standpoint. Happens all the time. Guys fight through injuries, and you'll say, well, so-and-so didn't have a great game. Our Nate Gary, player Eagles fans really disliked, and they couldn't understand why Jim Schwartz and Ken Plagiol loved the guy. Loved it. And, it came out later. He played a whole season with a sports hernia because they needed him. Now, I'm not trying to say he would have been a great player had he not had the sports hernia, but coaches have a lot of respect for things like that. So there's always sort of contextual issues.
And that's the National Football League. You have to be able to play through certain, not injuries, but pain, levels of tolerance of pain. It's expected of guys. That some guys are better at it and more willing to put up with that much more pain than others. So I remember that Gary story after the fact because, I was one of them going, why is this guy still in the lineup? Why are they still playing him? He's just not getting the job done. And then we found out after the fact that he was playing through pain. And even as an injured player, the Eagle coaching staff thought he was a better risk out there on the field. I forget who it was. We're both showing our age here, Johnny. We couldn't come up with guys who had done something or said something. You couldn't remember. It was Miles, who was the injured player who you found out 10 minutes later. Oh, he's not that injured. He's out there on the field. Who was it we had on who gave us the good line about depending on where you draw the line on statistical analysis, that you can add certain stats and facts to be able to say something that makes it look more awe-inspiring than it actually was. I think it was last week after Jalen's first 2 weeks that he was the only quarterback.
Yeah, that was Kincaid. Yeah, Kevin Kincaid.
Kincaid.
Crossing broad. Yeah,
exactly.
He's right, too, because
and
he brought up Robert Covington. Yeah, he's got 0.9 steals. It's like, yeah, you can draw that line anywhere you want. But I got to tell you, through 3 games, you can draw any line you want, and Jalen Hurts is going to look good.
Robert Covington and 0.8% tipped passes.
Yeah,
you keep adding stats to make a point, then you can make it look as good as you want. I saw a pretty good one on Jalen Hurts today. That through 3 games, Jalen Hurts has over 900 yards passing and 100 yards rushing. That there hasn't been a player in the National Football League that has done that since at the most 1940. They can't even go back and check some of the stats from before that. So at least for 80 years, no NFL player, no quarterback has thrown for 900 yards in his first 3 games and rushed for over 100 yards in his first 3 games. That's one that isn't, I don't think, is generally created. That's just flat out stats. That's just showing that you are a combination player. And the key to me is the 900 passing yards, because that's a 9-to-1 ratio. You and I debated this a little bit last week about how Jalen Hurts' strength is still the thing that Jalen Hurts does best in comparison to all the other quarterbacks in the league is that he's a better runner, that Lamar Jackson might be the only better runner as far as a quarterback goes than Jalen Hurts. he isn't at that level at passing just yet. Oh, he's getting close, Johnny Mac. 900 yards through three games. He's moving up that quarterback rating list pretty damn quickly, is he not?
Yeah. And by the way, I think number 2 overall in the Pro Football Focus rankings. Number 1, Lamar Jackson. Interesting. The game's changing. People are more open to the dual threat, and it's, you know, they see it with their eyes how difficult it is for defenses to deal with. But I want to give you my Jalen Hurts stat. And then this is the one I love because this is all the Eagles care about. And if you listen to Nick Sirianni, if you listen to Shane Steichen, if you listen to Jonathan Gannon, every single one of them says the same thing. 2 most important statistics: win the turnover battle, win the explosive play battle. You're going to win the game. Jalen Hurts is first in explosive plays in the NFL. Jalen Hurts is first in the NFL in fewest turnover-worthy plays. That's amazing. That's amazing because usually when you're making big plays, and it's not just running, there's been a ton of deep balls for Jalen Hurts. Usually you're taking chances.
Yep.
We talk about Trayvon Diggs defensively, makes so many explosive plays defensively. He takes chances. That's the reason he makes those plays. This guy's making the most explosive plays, and he's taking care of the football the best. That's amazing. You know, I've quoted Dennis Green a lot this week because I keep bringing it up. I said, you know, people are crowning the Eagles after 3 games, and I said, whoa, slow down. It's been phenomenal. The 3 games have been phenomenal, but slow down. And then I'm looking at the Giants last night. I'm like, yeah, we are who they thought we are, what we thought they were. Another Denny Greenism. They stink, basically. Even though they were 2-0, and I give
okay last night, John.
I give Brian Daboll credit. Same thing with Matt Eberflus in Chicago. I don't know how he's won games, but he's won games. But I know those 2 teams are not going to be relevant. It's a small sample size. It's a small sample size for the Eagles as well. Through this 3 game, they've looked like the best team in the NFL. Now, I haven't seen every play of the Bills. The Bills are really good, but the Bills lost the game. Let's be honest.
Yeah, the best team in the NFL was on the field with the Bills on.
Yeah,
Sunday.
I know. You're a big Miami guy. I think the Eagles have been the best team in the NFL through 3 games. Now, you know, it's 3 games. But, you know, here I'm going to pull it up and see where we are. So if you use the film, the PFF ratings, number 1 overall, Eagles. Number 1 offense, Eagles. Number 1 passing offense, Eagles. Number 1 pass blocking offense, Eagles. Number 1 receiving, Eagles. You got to get to the running game, believe it or not, before they're not number 1. It's amazing the way they play. It is amazing, but it's also, and I hate, and people are going to get mad at me, and this is the only point they're going to talk. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. There's going to be hiccups. Somebody's going to figure out something somewhere along the line. But what I can say is this is a really, really good football team.
Does that start this week against Jacksonville? The fact that the Jags have some very good young players on defense, very high draft picks on defense. Yeah, they used the number 1 overall on Trevor Lawrence 2 years ago, but they used the number 1 pick on a defensive player last year, this past draft. And they had 2 number 1 picks, so they used another one on Devin Lloyd, the linebacker. Is the Jacksonville Jaguars the best defense they'll have played in the first 4 games?
Yes. Yes.
So it might the inability to sustain might start this week, is what you're saying.
You know, it's still a very young team. I'm of the belief you do have to learn to win. I mentioned that with Detroit. Like Detroit, to me, is a much better team. I just talked about a much better team than Chicago, a much better team than the New York Giants. But they haven't learned to win. They had a game won this weekend, and they lost it in the final minute. They outplayed Minnesota. They blew it at the end. They still haven't learned to win games, which I think is a process you go through in the NFL. Now, the good thing about Jacksonville, they have a coach who knows how to win games, and so far through 3 games, they've looked really, really good, and that was a really impressive performance. And they just have, because they've drafted so high for so long, they have certain guys who just have freakish talent, and it starts with Lawrence and Walker. And you've already seen Walker. People, how can that guy be the number 1 overall? Well, you've already seen how that guy could be the number 1 overall pick. He's freakishly talented. Ed mentioned Devin Lloyd. Josh Allen in recent years is another guy who's turned into a really good player already. James Robinson, Travis Etienne is in the backfield. They have a lot of good players, and it kind of snuck up on people. And once I remember we were talking in the offseason about the betting markets and getting some value. And now the Eagles look very valuable from where they were back in March, where it was like 45-1 or whatever it was. There was tremendous value in the Eagles. Now you can't get value in the Eagles. There was always tremendous value in Jacksonville, because if it clicked for Trevor Lawrence, they were going to take a massive leap. I don't know if it's clicked for him. If it has, watch out. They're going to be a good team.
I think one of the pluses for them, and yes, right now, John and I aren't going to make picks today, but we're both leaning toward the Eagles getting toward 4-0. I can guarantee you that. I actually am more impressed with the Jaguars because of the step they've taken up on defense than what they've done on offense. I expected the offense to be better because it just made sense that Lawrence was going to be better in year number 2 than year number 1. He was actually going to be coached up by a guy who knows a little something about quarterbacks, Doug Pederson, as compared to what he had to deal with last year. It's the Jacksonville's improved defense that actually has impressed me more than what the offense has done so far this season. All right, Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald here with you on Birds 365. Coming up next, we'll get the perspectives of someone outside of the Philadelphia area. Sometimes it's nice to see how other people see it when they're not inundated with it on a day-in, day-out basis. Matt Verderam, one of the best national writers and podcasters when it comes to the National Football League from Fanside, and he's going to join us next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Appreciate you being on the stream. The water's fine here on Birds 365 as we talk about the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, people are pretty stoked and excited with the way the Eagles have played here in Philadelphia. Let's get a national perspective on them. Joining us from Fansided and one of the best football podcasts I listen to is Stack the Box podcast every week is On Point. Matt Verderam joins us here on Birds 365. How you been, MV?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing good, Matt. Let's start you off with the obvious question. Who's better, the 85 Bears or the current Eagles?
Well, the Bears lost. The Eagles haven't.
That's true. That's true. Good point. Good point. But how impressed have you been with this team and Jalen Hurts specifically, the improvement? We all talk about, there's this narrative Jody and I have talked about that you know, you can't get accurate yet. And I think player development is real. We've seen it in Josh Allen in Buffalo. We now see it with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. Guys can improve, and we're seeing it in real time.
We are. First of all, I mean, I'm very impressed by the Eagles. I put out my power rankings about an hour ago, and they're number one. I think they're playing like the best team in football right now. Now, they've got to sustain that. But right now, through 3 weeks, I think they've been the most impressive team. I know they and Miami are both the only undefeated teams. The Dolphins have won games, though, that I don't think they can sustain. Like I don't think the Dolphins are winning games that are outgained by 300 yards every week. That's not going to continue to happen. The Eagles are just killing teams. I mean, there's a difference in the way these teams are winning games. And you know, when you look at it, what's not to like? Hurts is averaging over 300 yards through the air. You've got 3 guys who are on pace for 1,000 yards catching the ball. Sanders is having a really good start to the year running the ball. You had 9 sacks last weekend over Washington. Now, some of that is Carson Wentz got involved, but that being said, 9 sacks is 9 sacks. I don't care who you're playing.
Yeah.
Look, they are playing really well. And as far as Hurts goes, you're right. Like most guys don't get more accurate. Most guys, typically, if you're not accurate in college, you're not accurate in pros. But with Hurts got better every year he was in college. Hurts went from Alabama to Oklahoma. I remember when he was coming out talking to people in the league who felt like, look, he was coached by Nick Saban and Lincoln Riley. Like those are 2 guys that even in the pros are well respected. So the thought was, hey, he's going to be a guy who can come in, who can learn, who's got a capacity to get better. He's done that. I mean, look, you don't hand out awards over 3 weeks, but if you were, he's the MVP of the league through 3 weeks of the season.
That's pretty damn impressive. And give me your take on this, because this is what annoyed me when people would say he can't get more accurate. Yeah, he can. Don't know that he will, but he can. It is possible. Those who just dismiss it and say it can't happen are wrong. And a big part of that, at least for me, is, but you have to work at it. And from the day he walked in here in Philadelphia, coming in as a second-round pick, people said, man, this kid's got a good work ethic. That Jalen Hurts is ready to put in the time, the effort, everything needed, everything that you have to have to be able to improve and see your game be upwardly mobile. How big a deal is that? Do you think, or do we overstate that just everybody works hard, everybody's trying to get to that second contract? Yeah, Jalen Hurts may work hard, but he's just one of everybody else. Or is that something that maybe those who said he couldn't get more accurate didn't put enough stock in?
No, definitely not everybody works hard. I mean, that some guys, they're blessed with an incredible amount of talent and they worked hard enough. And then they get there and they don't work that hard. Hurts has put in a lot of time. And I think to also make the point too, the Eagles have given him a ton of support. I remember this offseason, I wrote a piece on the Eagles offseason and kind of detailed every move they made and why they made it and the inside thought about why they did what they did. And talking to people around the team for the piece, like the general thought was, look, we've got to find out just how good Jalen Hurts can be. And it's not fair to this kid to give him a half-assed effort. Like, we need to put the best team around him that we can and then see if he can thrive because we think he can do it. Well, he's done it. So, I think Howie Roseman, who I know has been a lightning rod at times in Philly, one way or the other, like, he deserves a lot of credit. They have a really good roster, around them. And, and Hurts deserves credit because he's taken that opportunity and he's run with it. He could have had a good roster around him and just not been good, not worked hard enough, whatever the case may be. I also think it helped them that they gave him Nick Sirianni basically from the start of his career as a starter, and they've allowed him to grow together. You see a lot of times coaches going in and out, and team like right now at the Bears with Justin Fields, right? Like, teams trying to figure this thing out. It's a new system, but like how important coaching is in football. Look at the Jacksonville Jaguars who are going into Philadelphia on Sunday. That team, like, I understand they added talent, but they didn't add anybody who's going to the Hall of Fame on that team. Okay, and now they are 3-0. Excuse me, they're 2-1. Feels like they're 3-0. They're 2-1. They just beat the hell out of the Chargers. Trevor Lawrence looks like a completely different player, right? I mean, year to year, 1 year to the next, looks completely different. Why? Because he's well coached. I mean, you see that in Hurts as well. The Eagles have done a nice job surrounding him, coaching him up, and he's done a nice job of putting in the work.
Yeah, and my dog's chiming in to agree with you, Matt. So if you hear her, but I want to talk about, you mentioned the supporting cast. To me, A.J. Brown specifically offensively has been this domino piece where everything falls into place. Like Devontae Smith is a great young receiver. You saw him last week have his career game at Washington. But, as a number one in this league, he's probably that's a good player, but he's not a great player as a number one. As a number two, he's a great player. Or Dallas Goedert, you can go 2 or 3. You can toggle it back and forth with Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith. But you saw last season when those were your 2 top options, defenses could, formulate a game plan. Now that domino of A.J. Brown, what do you do? Who do you cover with this offense? And then you add the running game on top of it.
Well, it's all those things, and it's also, look, they have diverse skill sets, so it really they fit together well. Brown is that bigger-bodied receiver who, he can get down the field, but he also can just run these intermediate routes, and he's very hard to box out. He's very hard to tackle. Smith is a burner. He can get down the field. He can take a slant and go 50 yards with it. And Goddard, of course, is he'll do all the things tight ends do. He'll run his stick routes, he'll run down the seam, so on and so forth. They fit really well together. And I know when I talked to people for that piece I mentioned earlier, like, that was a thought of like, okay, they actually built it out with a basketball team in mind. They wanted to fit it like, okay, this guy is like a driver and a slasher, and this guy is going to post up and so on and so forth. And I think they did a great job. I mean, if you look at the way this team is fit, it really has worked. And Brown is that big-bodied guy who also gives Hurts a big target, like literally a physically big target. Who, look, if he's not open, he's still open. Throw it to him. Throw him the ball. It's 3rd and 7, that's fine. Let him go up and make a play. You see how much Tennessee misses him. They can't throw the ball for anything. So I'll be honest, I was shocked that the Titans traded him. But the Eagles, I mean, the fact A.J. Brown and Hollywood Brown both went for a first-round pick to me is staggering. Like, they're not even in the same stratosphere as players. And I think the Eagles, 4 years and 100 for A.J. Brown in this day and age, it's a pretty good deal. I'd take it. So, listen, it has all worked for Philadelphia at this point. Everybody's playing well. The line play is always a point of emphasis in Philadelphia, and the lines have been great. So, when you look at it, sitting at 3-0, and you go down the list of the next 6-7 opponents on the schedule. I mean, Philadelphia's probably going to be favored in every one of these games. So you feel pretty good about that. Like the Eagles are off and running, and in the division where they could maybe run away and hide a little bit here if somebody could ever beat Cooper Rush.
That's where I was going next. We did the wide focus. Eagles could be the best team in the NFL. Let's go more narrow focus. NFC East. Cowboys, Giants, Monday Night Football last night. I said this earlier on the show. I was kind of impressed by both defenses. I thought both defenses played pretty well.
Yeah.
I wasn't impressed by either offense. Sorry, Cooper Rush. I know you know how to win, but you're not.
All he does is win, Jody. All he does is win.
Okay. What was it you just said, John? It can't be sustainable.
No.
Cooper Rush's undefeated record also cannot be sustained. Are they going to run away and hide in the NFC East here? Is there anyone, either the Cowboys or we don't think it's going to be the Commanders? They handled them as easily as they did on Sunday. Out of the Giants, Cowboys, which one can hang in with the Eagles for as long as they can?
The Cowboys, only because if Dak comes back and he's healthy, then they're a real team. I don't think they're a great team, but I think they're like a playoff caliber team. So I would say that the Giants, look, I think Dable's a really good hire. And I think he's going to make them more competitive. That being said, Daniel Jones can't play. He's just not good. And you're not winning 10, 11, 12 games with Daniel Jones, which is, I think, at bare minimum, what you're going to have to do to keep up with Philadelphia. I mean, if you look at Philadelphia's schedule, no, they got to play Dallas a few times. That can obviously shrink gaps and stuff like that. But, I mean, the Eagles' schedule is not that hard. It really is not. As you look down the stretch here, it gets a little harder toward the end of the year. But no, I think Dallas is probably the only one. Washington's not good. The Giants, I know, are 2-1. The hell, they might be 3-1. They play the Bears this weekend at the Meadowlands. I think the Giants will fade. The Cowboys are the team that if they can stay afloat here and they get Washington at home, they could very well win that game even with Rush. If they stay afloat, they could be a team that wins in double digits. So I think it's definitely Dallas. Washington and New York, to me, are just after Rams. And maybe New York hangs around a little bit after the fast start, but I don't think the talent level is anywhere near what Philadelphia has.
All right, I'm going to put the cart before the horse here, Matt. But I want to get the national perspective from this. And we know how difficult it is to build your teams. You just talked about the job, and I agree with you. Howie Roseman did tremendous job. It's a lot easier to do when you're paying the quarterback $1 million. After this season, Jalen Hurts is eligible for an extension for the first time. If he continues to play like this, that's going to be a big number. How difficult does it become there? You talk about, what is it? Is it Jalen Hurts' improvement? Is it the roster around him? The obvious answer is it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But how much more difficult when he gets that second contract does this become?
Well, I think, look, first off, it is both, right? I mean, look, you can't talk about Hurts being this much better without talking about how much better the team is. I mean, that's just part and parcel. And I know some people take that as like criticism of Jalen Hurts. It's not. It's just reality. He's got a better team around him. So, and he's taking advantage of it. You're right, though. Like, look, John, if they continue to play like this, and Hurts is like, let's even say he's not the MVP of the league. Let's say he's, top 10 quarterback, no doubt, by the end of the year. Okay, well, you're paying him. You're paying him, and guess what? You're paying him $50+ million a year because that's what the going rates could be. I talked to 3 very prominent agents right around Memorial Day for a column I did about Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. And said, look, if these guys have good years, and you were their agents, what would you ask for? And all of them individually said $55 million a year. So, I mean, Hurts is going to be expensive. Hurts is not going to be cheap. This is not going to be, he's not getting $41 million a year. He's going to get 50+. And Lamar Jackson might get about 60 based off the way that thing's going in Baltimore right now. So, look, it gets harder. Now, it should be noted that a lot of times with these extensions, those big dollars don't kick in until after the rookie deal ends. So the Eagles, I think, would still have a couple of years where they'd have very affordable cap hits. With Hurts, it would be after that. I think the Eagles probably have this and maybe 2 more years of like, okay, they can, especially 1 more year, and then the option gets a little more expensive. But I think for 2 more years, Eagles be okay financially. And then it becomes, you got to make a decision. You got to make decisions on certain guys. And you see that all around the league. I mean, the Bills are about to go through that. The Bills, they better win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
Because when that number goes up with Allen, a lot of that defense is going to be out the door. It's got to be. You can't afford. That's why Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill because they had to build their defense through the draft. They knew there's no way we can just go out and sign 3 more guys. You can't. So the key, of course, is when that day comes, you've got to build through the draft. And the Eagles have drafted well. If you can continue to draft well, you'll be fine. It's the teams that can't draft well that all of a sudden become very top heavy, like I think, frankly, the Rams are about to become, and you fall off because now you're paying this quarterback, but yet you don't have any influx of talent.
You're right about the Jalen Hurts thing. That's a little scary. Jalen, 50 plus.
Those numbers.
We haven't gotten into that 50 plus conversation yet, but you're probably right there.
Coming.
And oh, by the way, remember, he's a second round draft pick, so they don't have an option year.
That's true.
They got one more
You're
year.
Right. You're right.
And then the year after, it's going to balloon up pretty quickly because he was the first round guy. Do want to ask you a National Football League, across the league question. Before the year started, I said the AFC West is the unquestionable best division in football, and I didn't really think it was close. Not so fast, my friend.
No.
Chiefs lose to a team that hadn't won a game yet. Chargers get pounded. I know they got some injuries, but that's life in the National Football League. You got to deal with injuries. Get beat up badly by the Jags. Denver, to their credit, held on and won in a snore fest 11-10 against the 49ers.
We should all file a class action lawsuit for that game.
Yeah, that wasn't the most exciting game ever to come down the pike. And oh, by the way, the Josh McDaniels-led Raiders, man, do I feel good about this because I think the guy's a stiff. And he was almost the coach of the Eagles. Johnny Mack can tell you that whole story. And he can't coach his way out of a paper bag. But the Raiders are 0-3. What the hell happened to the AFC West?
Well, I think you kind of just hit on the point I was going to make. The coaching stinks in the AFC West. That's what happened.
Ooh, don't let Andy hear you say that.
Hey, listen, I'm not talking about Andy right now. Although although Andy's had his own issues so far this year with their offense. But I think, look, when you look at these 4 teams, Nathaniel Hackett, I've never seen anybody ever more in over his head through 2 games. I mean, it is
Josh McDaniels with Denver. He was the last one.
Yeah, Denver's really got a long-standing tradition with this. I mean, Hackett, it honestly, like I almost feel bad saying it because it feels like piling on at this point, but it feels like if a kid played against him in Madden, like a 13-year-old kid, they'd be able to just handle him, right? I mean, it's unbelievable how incompetent they are running anything, right? Like whether it's like getting out there and snapping the ball on time or it's having a punt returner on the field. Like it's been bad. Also, that's been married with Russell Wilson has not looked like they expected him to look. So you have that in Denver. The Raiders, I mean, Jody, you said exactly what I was going to say. Like Josh McDaniels, by the way, do you know in his last 25 games as a head coach, he's 5-20?
Oh.
Yeah, it's not good.
Oof.
Okay. And also, they can't block the 3 of us. So they have all kinds of problems. Devontae Adams maybe would like to go back to his former Hall of Fame quarterback, not his current one. And then you have the Chargers who, look, I said this at the beginning of the year, and I feel fairly vindicated with this. The Chargers, I think, are really talented if you look at their top 10, 12 guys on the roster. Maybe the most talented in football. The problem is after that, they are very, very shallow on their depth chart. And if you have any kind of injuries, you have a big, big, big problem. Well, they have a lot of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing about them, they find ways to lose games. They should have beat the Chiefs in week 2. They dropped 1 million interceptions. Mahomes had probably the worst day of his life. He threw 4 balls right at guys who couldn't catch any of them. The Chiefs had a 7th-round rookie catch a ball and run 100 yards the other direction. Like, he might have ran with the division title. Because when you look at these teams, look, Kansas City had an awful loss to the Colts. If you guys watch that game or anybody watching the show watch that game,
yeah, I watched that.
That game looked like the Chiefs bet the Colts money line. That game was unbelievable. Kansas City did everything imaginable to lose that game and still almost won. Like I think the Chiefs will be fine. They might even lose this week in Tampa, but I think the Chiefs are going to win their 12 games, and they will, I think, eventually win this division by a couple of games. When they get to January, they'll be as scary as anybody. But look, you guys watched Andy Reid for a long time. There are some games he comes out with plans that it's unbelievable, and nobody can touch him. And there are other games where it's like, did they prepare for this team? Did they know this game was coming? that fell into the latter category. But I think Kansas City will be just fine. I think Kansas City is clearly the best team in the division.
Yeah, with Nathaniel Hackett, it's interesting, Matt, because I got the feeling that they hired him. Their whole plan was Aaron Rodgers bait.
Yes, it was.
And then they didn't get Aaron Rodgers, and that's not why you hire a coach. I mean, that was a bet, and I love George Payton. I love him. I think he's a great personnel guy. But, man, that was a bad hire. I hate that, short sample size. But you're right. He's just completely unprepared.
It's never good when 2 games into a career, you're hiring a coach to coach your coach. Like, they literally brought in an assistant head coach to just make decisions for him on game day. That's a problem. If you have to do that after 2 games, it probably is not going to be a long-standing situation. Look, the other part with Denver, too, I got to tell you, I just don't think when you watch them offensively, they've got good running backs. I think Sutton's a nice receiver. Judy can be at times, although Judy drops the ball too often. They just don't have a ton of talent. Like, offensively, they're all right. I'm not saying they're without talent, but they're not loaded. You don't look at them and say, how do you stop them? And if Russell Wilson's not going to scramble and he's not going to run for some yardage, he's a totally different quarterback. I mean, he's just a completely different player, right? So I think that AFC West, you guys are right. Like, you look at it, I think the Chargers have enough talent that perhaps they can turn around, but losing Slater is a huge injury.
Yeah.
That offensive line without him is a big problem. And then you compound that with, oh, by the way, the quarterback has fractured rib cartilage. Like, none of it's good. I will say, they play the Texans this week in Houston. And normally you'd say, oh, that's a get-right game. This is a game over the course of the years with the Chargers where this is the game, like, they go down there and lose by 20 points inexplicably. So can they win? Because if they lose this game, it might be time to turn out the lights. We'll see.
All right, Matty, I want to ask about one other team, not a whole division, but one team that I may have to eat some crow on. I was pretty bullish on the Saints coming into the season. John and I went back and forth on this. He thinks the Eagles are going to benefit from having the Saints pick because it actually could be in a pretty good spot. As of right now, it's the 7th overall pick, so he's right. Maybe I put too much faith in Jameis Winston. Maybe I put too much faith in their defense. Alvin Kamara's looked average for me this year. I thought when they got his suspension pushed back because he keeps dragging his feet in court. All right, got to get off to a fast start. Winston looks like Jameis. He's got 4 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Did I blatantly overrate the Saints before the year started?
Yes, but so did I. So I'm in the same boat as you. I thought they would be a good team. I thought they'd win 10, 11 games just because their roster looks like a really good roster. The problem is Jameis is playing like Jameis. He also has a bunch of back fractures, which I don't think is helping anything. And Dennis Allen kind of looks like head coach Dennis Allen and not defensive coordinator Dennis Allen. Like, their offense stinks. Their offense has way too much talent to be this bad, and yet it is this bad. They're lucky they're not 0-3, honestly. True. I mean, they're really fortunate they're not 0-3. So they've not played well. They have not been good. Jameis just – there are times with him where you're tantalized by his talent, and then there are other times, and frankly, more often than not, the times you're like, what are you doing? Why are you throwing that ball? Who are you looking at? It's just – when you have a defense as good as New Orleans has, you think like you would just play a safer game, but he doesn't. He will just throw the ball into harm's way because he doesn't care. Like he will take chances that are reckless. And then again, I think the coaching too, like their offense, you're right. Like, it should be through Alvin Kamara. Well, it hasn't been. It hasn't been through Alvin Kamara. So, the Saints throw the ball deep more often than any team in football, but they're not hitting on these throws. They're just throwing incompletions down the field. It's not working out. Chris Olave's looked pretty good, but other than that, it's not been good in New Orleans.
Yeah, to me, it was kind of simple with the Saints, and Drew hasn't been there for a while. But to assume you're going to be the same team, but you're moving on from Drew Brees and Sean Payton, who I don't think is a Hall of Fame coach, but he's a very good coach, and you're replacing him with Dennis Allen. Well, they went 11 games with those guys, 11-12. They're not going to win 11-12 with Jameis Winston and Dennis Allen. To me, I don't know. You're going to have those hiccups when you make that kind of change. Plus, I'm not a big Dennis Allen fan, but I am a big Doug Pederson fan. I want to ship to the Jags with you, Matt. Now, they've been bad for so long, And I said that was my easiest prediction because Urban Meyer was such a disaster. You were going to get professionalism. So it was obvious to me that Jacksonville was going to be very happy with Doug Pederson, at least early in the process. But they've been drafting, the top of the draft for so long. All of a sudden you wake up and say, oh, I got some talent here. And the Jags, they look like a potential playoff team to me. Am I skipping steps?
No, I don't think you are. That division is atrocious. So, I mean, they might win that division. Look, I thought they'd win 7 or 8 games this year. I think I picked them to go 7-10 officially, but I'm not surprised they're a lot better. They couldn't have been any worse. And I really do believe, and you guys have a few years on me, but I think Urban Meyer's got to be the worst head coach I've ever seen in the NFL. Ever. Hilariously bad, right? Almost to the point that you thought it was a bit at one point. It was just going to be a long game that Saturday Night Live had going for 4 months. I can't believe he was ever head coach in the NFL. Doug Pederson, say whatever you want. I mean, he's a Super Bowl winning head coach. He's an adult in the room. He knows how to coach offense. And by the way, it's working out. They are moving the ball. When you watch them, and I've watched every snap of them this year, they don't do anything down the field, really. They're not a team that's going down the field. It's a lot of quick games, a lot of short passes underneath. It's a lot of James Robinson and Travis Etienne. But you know what? It's working. Moving the ball right down the field. Now, they're going to run into teams that are more talented than them. I think they might have a tough weekend this weekend in Philadelphia. But they're not going to run into any teams more talented than them in the division. They're more talented than those 3 teams. The AFC South this year, they play the AFC West. They just killed the Chargers. They could definitely beat Denver and the Raiders. Those games are at home. Would I pick them to go into Arrowhead and win? No, probably not. But so what? If you go 3-1 against AFC West, you're pretty happy about it. I'm impressed by them. And I thought 7-8 wins at the beginning of the year. I could see them maybe getting to 9 or 10 wins. I could see that. Lawrence is playing a lot better. They've got some real talent. I don't think they're as good as Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore. I don't think they're there yet. But could they make the playoffs and win that division? Yeah, they could. And that's a huge step for a team that's been the number 1 overall pick holder the last couple of years.
Matty, last thing for me, and this is something that I think I'm borderline obsessed with. Today is day 32 of Aaron Donald's free pass from assaulting a Cincinnati Bengal player with a helmet, and we've heard nothing. Zero zilch in weeks now about if there's going to be any repercussions for what he did. The NFL is trying its hardest to sweep this under the rug. I understand the Rams trying to sweep it under the rug because they don't want to lose the best defensive player in the National Football League. But the league has to do something about this. And I'm not buying the whole, we can't do anything because it's practice. Well, you can punish the Rams and then ask the Rams to turn around and punish the player. They've done nothing. If we have you on 5 weeks from now, am I going to say it's day 72 of the free pass for Aaron Donald from the National Football League? How's this stuff going to shake out?
Yeah, yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. The NFL is not going to do anything. But I give you credit. You might be the only person who still.
He is. That's what I said. Matt,
I'm perfectly fine with that.
No,
if
but that's fine.
Be the banner carrier, I will because it's hypocrisy at its highest.
But here's the point, Jody. The NFL, sticks their finger up, and what's the wind? Nobody's talking about it except Jody McDonald, so they don't care.
I'll beat that drum until the cows come home.
I appreciate that, Jody. You have this commitment. You've hung on there for more than a month at this point. That is admirable. I do not think anything is going to happen because I don't think the NFL is concerned about it. But I agree with you in one way, though. Look, if you're going to have all these joint practices, okay, it's not just a regular team practice. Now it is more like a scrimmage. And now, okay, it's not a game. I get that, but it's 2 teams getting together. If you got a guy swinging a helmet and cracking somebody over the head with it, that's a problem. Okay.
Yes.
And Aaron Donald, you've got here. You know what? Here's my way of putting it. So right now, this all happened in games. Right? This is different, but I think the hypocrisy point stands. Tom Brady, I think it's fair to say, against the Saints, incited a fight. Okay, him and Bruce Arians were at the middle of inciting this whole thing that Mike Evans got suspended for, and rightfully so. By the way, pushed the guy with the camera. That's fine. But Brady gets nothing out of this. Nothing. Not a fine, not a talk, nothing. We talked about this game earlier. The Chiefs and the Colts, as bad as the Chiefs were, they're going to win that game. And Chris Jones gets called for unsportsmanlike conduct for talking to Matt Ryan with 4 minutes to go in the game. It was 4th and 13. The Colts are going to have to punt the ball back to the Chiefs. We're up 4 at this point. They're going to win the game if they get the punt back. Chris Jones gets called for talking. And you're like, that flips the whole game. And yet Tom Brady and Bruce Arians, who's not a head coach anymore, who just happens to be on the sideline, incites what was a borderline brawl in the Saints-Bucks game. Nothing, no penalty, nothing at all, just offsetting, and everybody goes, like, how do all these things equate? No, look, whatever. Chris Jones, he talked and he shouldn't have, fine. But, like, if that's a penalty, how are all these guys taking penalties? That is my biggest problem with the NFL. It's consistency of the calls. And the consistency, by the way, is suspensions as well, which is just all over the map. Guy does this, he gets this. Guy does the same thing a year later, he gets 2 games more. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The NFL should be a lot better with that.
And I think of it as not an easy job. I think Goodell's got one of the hardest jobs on the planet. And that's why he gets paid $30 to $40 million. It's not easy. And from time to time, he stubs his toe and gets it wrong. There's no stubbing of the toe here with Aaron Donald. He swung a helmet in anger at another. The NFL, the most conscious concussion company on the planet, are going to let him get away with doing something like that.
Jody, you know this league does everything because of the court of public opinion. So before you blame the NFL, blame the fans who are not. If the fans were up in arms, they would do something, but they don't care. So the league doesn't care. And the hypocrisy is there. But I always say pointing out hypocrisy to hypocrites is a fruitless exercise because they don't care. They don't care about hypocrisy.
Yeah, you're right. And when will it become a big issue here in Philadelphia? When the Eagles are playing the Rams in the NFC Championship game. Everyone over, hey, Jody, you were right. Why don't we suspend Aaron Donald this week? That's when it will become a topic of conversation here in Philadelphia. Matty V, always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you much for hopping on board. Since I mentioned 5 weeks, why don't we get you back in 5 weeks? Circle it on your calendar now. We're going to need you back in 5 weeks, okay?
Hey, let's do it anytime, guys.
Thanks, Matt Verderam from Fanside and his podcast, Stacking the Box, an excellent one for you NFL fans out there. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac, coming back. You know what we got to do? Put a bow on this show.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pondley Hockey, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Coming down the home stretch debate, Tuesday edition of Birds 365. Johnny Mac, what's on the work docket for you the rest of the day? Eagles availability, practice, where you headed, where you going, and are you crazy enough to get in a car with Ed Kracz again?
I am not getting in the car with Ed Kracz. I am getting in the car, though. It's coordinator day. So Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen, Michael Clay, before we ramp up for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
You asked, I thought, the best question yesterday when you had your coach responsibility. So if you're just looking for a tip from your buddy, give Shane Steichen a chance to do a little bit of a maybe honesty, but a victory lap as well. How much does the offensive coordinator get credit when a play like the one they had to Devontae Smith down the sideline from Jalen Hurts gets made, to rush to the line of scrimmage, to be able to get that snap off before the opposing coach gets to challenge it? How much is that in the lap?
Well, I gave him credit for doing that because Ron Rivera obviously didn't get the challenge out in time. I think it would have been. I don't know, because FedEx Field, I've said that pretty consistently. Right. Now I've seen it since. It's close. I don't know if they really would have overturned it.
It could have gone either way. It's one of those.
So my assumption is they called it.
Sorry to interrupt you. The reason that I would say the Eagles probably, if it had been challenged, it might not have been overturned, was because the call on the field stands.
Yeah, exactly. Call on the field, and I think it would have stood. Now, I asked everybody after the game on the JAKIB post-game show and all that, and they were all telling me it would have been overturned. Now that I've gotten a chance, I don't think it would have been overturned.
It was close. It was really close.
But and that's why, because if it were on the field, if it were called incomplete on the field, I don't think it would have been overturned. I think because they called it on the field, I think they would have stuck with it. But still, all the credit in the world for getting up there and getting that playoff and not giving Ron Rivera the opportunity. You know, I wrote that after the game. I said that was a key moment because now in my head I was thinking it was going to be overturned. Now that I've rewatched it, I think they would have stayed with the call. But either way, it's a smart thing to do.
Steichen take a victory lap for that, you think?
Hey, Shane Steichen's going to be a head coach in this league. I mean, he's going to get plenty of victory laps. If this offense, this is the best offense in football. If that continues, sayonara, Shane Steichen. That's how this league works. So enjoy Shane Steichen while you have Shane Steichen.
All right, Johnny Mac, we need to exit stage left. Have a good coordinator day down at the NovaCare complex. I'm ready to do another show. I know I got to wait 22 hours, but I'm ready to do another Birds 365. Are you?
Yeah, Doug Pederson week ramping up on Wednesday. That's the official start. Doug Pederson week is here.
We will do just that in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.